The signs were ready and lay at the front door. I spent most of the last 2 days on them because I wanted them to be perfect. Now comes the hard part. Up the stairs into the master bedroom, rip off the sheets, rip the mattress off the king-size bed and half carry, half down the stairs, down the hallway, out the front door, and onto the front lawn just off the street. Return to the house, go up the stairs, throw the bedding down the stairs, take it outside, throwing it in a pile next to the mattress. I look at the clock, 422. I have to hurry. I need to make it by 5. Then I disassembled and took out the bed in parts, assembled it below, and by 435 the bed was ready. Next is the kitchen table. It was light enough that I could walk up and carry it, turning it sideways and pointing it out the door, placing it next to the bed in the yard. The last item was a 6x8 rug in the living room. I rolled it up and placed it next to other items in the yard, set up signs and proudly noted that it was only 455. There are 10 minutes left before my wife returns. I walked out into the middle of the street and turned to look at my work. It looked so beautiful that it almost brought tears to my eyes. My wife's bed and my marital bed, kitchen table and rug, 3 places that I knew for sure where my wife and her lover had sex repeatedly over the past 6 months, and the signs were placed high enough to be out of reach, and one by one I read them. Large sign in front of the furniture, "These items are yours free. They are no longer needed in this house. If you can stomach the stench of adultery and broken vows, help yourself." The sign above the bed read, "On this bed, my wife has repeatedly broken her wedding vows and destroyed our marriage by having sex with her lover twice a week for the past 6 months. This afternoon was their last date." There was a sign above the kitchen table that said, "My wife and her lover often entertained themselves at this table, usually just a few hours before she served me dinner." Above the mat, there hung a sign with the inscription. For each sign, I included a 17x24 photograph of the adulterous couple illustrating their actions on the corresponding piece of furniture. The 5th sign, slightly mounted behind the table, read, "My wife's lover is her boss, Greg Allen of Mitchell, Price and Allen Realty. He is married and has 3 children. I don't think his wife knows about all this, but she will soon. For 57, just in time, she'll be home any minute." I turned around and looked around and found that a group of neighbors had already gathered to see what I was doing. Several cars stopped and several people were talking on their cell phones, either calling their friends to come watch or calling the police to have me arrested for promoting public indecency. I casually waved to the crowd and entered the house, closing the door behind me. At exactly 5:05 p.m., I saw my wife's car turn the corner at the end of the block and immediately slowed down when she saw all the people gathered outside our house, looking at something on our lawn and talking and laughing among themselves. She slowly drove up to the house we'd shared for the last 10 years and stood in front of it, looking at the furniture and signs in our front yard, paying particular attention, I'm sure, to the large photographs of her and her boss, Greg Allen. Even through her car window and the window of my house, and with all the talking of 40 or 50 people standing around and gawking, I heard her scream, "No! Oh, God, no!" Finally, her gaze moved from the signs to the front window of the house where she saw me. We stared at each other. She looked heartbroken, her face ash and white. I saw tears running down her cheeks as she seemed to be asking me why. I had the same question for her. I watched her for a few seconds, then turned away and pulled the curtains behind me. I think I should explain how my wife, Sherry, and I ended up in this tragic place. My name is Jack Meyer. I met Sherry in college my freshman year. A mutual friend of ours suggested we meet, and when we met for the first time, I was smitten. Sherry wasn't a beautiful woman in the classic sense, but she was damn cute and sexy, 5'2", tall, with beautiful blue eyes and shoulder-length blonde hair. Her body was petite, but perfectly proportioned. Her ample breasts and thin waist captivated me, and although she did not know it at the time, I had made up my mind, and the thought of not winning her never crossed my mind. Sherry and I started dating, and within a few weeks we became a couple. A month after we met, we made love for the first time, and it was like nothing I had ever experienced. I was obsessed with Sherry and couldn't get enough of her body. Neither of us were first-time virgins, but our experience was limited and we enjoyed each other's bodies. I think it's safe to say that we were as deeply in love as we could be. We got married right after high school and moved into our first home, a condominium in Van Nuys. Sherry received her real estate license and went to work for one of the most renowned agencies in the area. I used my engineering degree to get a good position at an electronics company, and we settled into what I thought was the perfect life. Over the next 13 years, we lived an amazing life together. First in our apartment, and then as our incomes grew, we bought our dream home and expanded our family. First came Shelby, who is now 8 years old, and 2 years later came Ryan, who is now 6 years old. Sherry and I loved these 2 children to bits. We lived for each other and for our family. So what happened? It's a shame I can't say. I wish I could say I picked up on little signs that told me something was wrong, but I didn't. I was completely blind and calm, living in a world of absolute love and trust with my wife. It took a happy accident to bring me up to speed. An accident caused by our daughter Shelby getting sick at school. It was Thursday, and just before noon, the school nurse called me and told me that Shelby was sick with something like the flu. At the time, I was in the middle of a staff meeting and asked the school nurse to please call my wife. The nurse told me she tried to call Sherry at her office, where she was told my wife would be out most of the rest of the day. She called our home, but no one answered, so she left a message on her cell phone only to be directed to her voicemail. So she called me because it was important that my daughter be picked up as soon as possible. I apologized to my staff and drove as quickly as possible to Shelby's school, where I picked her up and headed home. When we got there and I opened the garage door, I was surprised to see a car I didn't recognize parked in my car's spot next to my wife's car. At that very moment, a lump formed in my throat and my stomach began to twist. No, this can't be, I told myself. My wife, the woman I love more than life itself, cannot have an affair. It is impossible. But still, why was there a strange car in the garage? Something was very wrong and I had to find out, and I couldn't let my daughter find out. Stay in the car for a minute, Shelby, but why? I want to sleep, she whined. I know that, baby, but I think there's an exterminator at home spraying the house for bugs, and the spray will make you even sicker. I lied to her. The first lie I ever told my daughter. Let me check first, and then I'll come and pick you up. Shelby whined a little more, but lay back in the back seat to wait for me. I opened the door to the kitchen as quietly as I could, desperately hoping to find my wife and one of her friends drinking coffee and chatting at the kitchen table. But when I turned the corner, the kitchen was empty. I walked through the kitchen and into the living room, hoping to find her sitting on the couch talking, but there was no one there either. Then I heard her laugh, the joyful, girlish laugh that I knew so well. It came from above and my heart sank. The only rooms upstairs were the bedrooms. My knees were weak, but I forced myself forward. No matter how bad it was, I had to find out. I walked up the stairs quietly, the carpet softening the sound of my steps. The first bedroom belonged to my daughter. The door was open, and looking inside, I found the room empty, the bed made. The second door led to my son's room, and the door was closed. I started to open it, and then I heard my wife's laughter again coming from the far end of the hallway from the master bedroom. With my heart stuck in my throat, I crept to the edge of the door and listened. At first, I heard nothing. Then I heard the sound of a bed rocking gently against the wall, and then my wife's voice. Oh, God, Greg, so good. Oh, yeah, baby, be my man. Then a man's voice. It's nice, isn't it, Sherry? Yes, Greg, you know it's good. The best thing ever. I've told you that 1,000 times. Even your worthless husband, Jack. He was breathing heavily. Please don't call Jack a weakling, Greg. He's not. He just can't make me feel the way you do. He loves me very much and tries very hard, but every time he makes love to me, all I can think about is that you are inside me, filling me, completing me, like no other. My body turned to ice. My loving wife could not bear the way I made love to her. I had to see for myself, but at the same time, I didn't want them to see me. I realized that my marriage was over, but I still needed visual proof of her affair. With my heart completely broken, I slowly opened the door just an inch, just so I could look inside, and what I saw killed every ounce of love I had ever felt for my loving wife. I recognized the man next to her as her boss, Greg Allen. My first instinct was to rush at him and beat the crap out of him, but I realized that I would end up in jail. After all, he did not rape my wife. She gave herself to him willingly and enthusiastically. Somehow I made it to the car, lowered the garage door and started the engine, pulling out of the driveway. "Dad, where are we going?" "I feel bad. I want to go to bed." "I know, Shelby, but I was right. What happens in the house will make you even sicker than it already is. I've only been inside for a few minutes and I'm not feeling well, not to tell her the truth, but not to lie either. I'll take you to Grandma's for a few hours until the stench goes away." It was a 15-minute drive to my mom's house, and as I drove, my mind went completely crazy. My marriage is over. Over. Without any hope of salvation, there is no way I will stay with the woman I saw a few minutes ago when she and her lover were doing it in my bed. My bed, what a bitch. I slammed my fist on the steering wheel and tears rolled down my cheeks. "Dad, what happened?" "It's okay, Shelby. I'm fine. Don't worry, I'm fine." I left Shelby with my grandmother, telling her I would pick her up in a couple of hours. I didn't explain anything to my mom about what I had witnessed. I just told her to keep an eye on Shelby until I got home from work. I was tempted to go home and face the cheating couple, but I decided that I needed more than just confrontation. I needed revenge. And while returning to my office, I began to formulate plans that would destroy my wife and her boss. The electronics company I worked for had several divisions. When I got to my office, I asked my secretary to make sure I was not disturbed for the rest of the day. Then I picked up the phone and called my colleague in the security department. Dan Taylor was an outstanding engineer and a good friend since college. I told him that I needed to see him immediately, and he said that he would come to me in half an hour. He came 20 minutes after the call. "What's new, Jack?" "Come in, Dan, and close the door." "Wow, you look like you just lost your last friend." "I think so. And I need help." "Whatever, Jack. What's going on?" "I just caught my wife and her boss having sex in my house in my bed." "Damn it, Jack. You're kidding." "I would like to. I had to pick up my daughter from school, and when I got home, there was a strange car sitting in my garage. I snuck inside and found them in our bedroom on our bed. I couldn't believe it, but it's true." "Damn it, Jack. This shouldn't happen to anyone. What happened when you collided?" "I didn't. I wanted to, but my daughter is sick and I couldn't risk her seeing them. So I made her wait for me in the car. After I saw them together, I quietly left and took Shelby to my mom." "What are you going to do?" "I'm not entirely sure, but I know I need proof. I need audio and video of them next time they do this. And that's where you come in. Do you need security cameras and microphones? Something small that I can hide in a few rooms in the house so I can record everything that happens." "I think I can help you with this, Jack. But how do you know what the next time will be? Maybe it was a one-time thing when things got out of control." "No chance, Dan. They talked about doing this regularly for the past 6 months. I don't know if they always come to my house, but I bet they do. Hotels leave a paper trail that neither of them can afford, and his wife is home during the day, so it's just my house when I'm at work and the kids are at school." We talked for a few more minutes and then got down to business. Dan said he had access to a new beta line of wireless miniature cameras and microphones that would work with my laptop or home computer. He also had a small voice recorder that I could put under Sherry's car seat to record any conversations she might have while driving. This would only record her side of the conversation, but it was better than nothing. I thanked him and told him I would pick everything up at his office the next day. Coming home that night was the hardest thing I've ever done. I had no idea if I could face my wife and act like nothing had happened. I decided that the best thing I could do was make Sherry think I was feeling bad, which I actually was. I picked up Shelby from my mom, and when I got home, Sherry was in the kitchen cooking dinner. When she saw that Shelby was with me, she went crazy. "Where have you been? And why didn't you call me and tell me Shelby was sick?" "I just got a message from the school nurse on my answering machine. The school tried to call you Sherry, but for some reason you were unavailable. They called your office and were told you weren't there, then they tried your home phone and left a message. They even called your cell phone, but it went to voicemail. Oh my God, I must have accidentally turned it off when I was showing it at home. I didn't have a minute to myself all day." "Yes, I'm sure of it," I thought. Too busy to worry about my daughter, Sherry hugged Shelby and told her how sorry she was, then helped her into bed. My wife may be a cheater, but she truly loves our children. I seem to be an obstacle to her happiness. Well, that was about to change, and very soon. Sherry put her daughter to bed and returned to the kitchen to make her some soup and finish preparing dinner for all of us. "I don't feel well either," I told her. "I think I'll sleep in the guest room tonight in case I'm contagious." Sherry felt my forehead. You do seem sweaty, dear, and you look pale. Yes, I thought, pale and sweaty. This is what happens when you catch your wife with another man in your bed. I didn't answer her. I just turned and walked up the stairs. I went to the master bedroom first. I really didn't want to go in there, but I needed my shaving supplies, toothbrush, and clothes for work the next day, so I forced myself into the room. The window was open. The smell of sex was gone, and the bed was made. She must have changed the sheets. It killed me to watch this. Anger rose up in me like a wave, but I suppressed it. I had to remain calm until I could bring down the fires of hell on their heads. And I will do it. Of course I will. I gathered my things and went into the guest bedroom, closing the door behind me. I stripped down to my underwear and climbed into bed. My body felt like wood. I wanted to cry, but I forced myself to hold back. I had a mission to accomplish, and I couldn't let my emotions get in the way. For several hours, I lay in the dark, sleep eluding me. My wife came into the room after feeding the children and putting them to bed. I pretended to be asleep. She touched my forehead with her palm and left the room, closing the door behind her. Sherry always took the kids to school, so I got up early, showered, and left the house before she got up. Honestly, I didn't care what she thought at that moment. I just wanted to leave. From what I considered until yesterday to be a wonderful marriage, built on lifelong fidelity, honesty, and commitment, how blind I was, how tragically wrong I was. I got to work before anyone in the office arrived, made coffee, and began organizing my plans. I knew I would have to cancel our joint credit cards, transfer half of our joint checking and savings accounts to another bank in my name only. The will, life insurance, and beneficiaries in the 401k need to be changed, removing Sherry and naming only Shelby and Ryan. It seemed like so little needed to be done to dissolve the last 13 years of my life. It had to be more difficult, and deep down I believed that at some point it would be. I also knew that I needed to find a good divorce lawyer to try to stop Sherry from screwing me over. This was a no-fault state of divorce, so adultery would have played no role in the financial settlement. However, it could help me keep my children. Sherry proved how unimportant I was in her life, but she was a good mom, and I didn't want to keep her away from the kids. I just wanted joint custody so I could remain an important part of their lives, too. I tried my best not to think about our love life and how humiliating it was to hear my wife tell her lover how superior he was to me in every way. I knew that if I let myself dwell on this right now, I would start to doubt myself, and I couldn't let that happen just yet. I knew it would come later, and when it finally caught up with me, it would most likely destroy me. Once I finished my list, I called Dan's office. He was there and said that by noon he would have everything I needed. He'll even come with me to help me set it up and make sure I know how to use it all. I tried to concentrate on clearing some papers from my desk when my cell phone rang. I realized it was Sherry, and after 3 rings, I answered. Her voice never failed to warm me, but this time the warmth was simply a harbinger of burning anger. "Hi, baby. How do you feel?" she asked in the most gentle voice. My stomach hurts a little. "I'm worried about you, dear. You left this morning before I had a chance to check on you. Yes, I have a lot of things to take care of, and not much time, so I came early. Please, Jack, take care of yourself. I don't know what I would do if something happened to you. You know that you, Shelby, and Ryan are my whole life. You have a very strange way of showing it." I thought to myself, but I told her, yes, I'll be fine. You just need to get it out of your head. Well, if you're up for it tonight, I can think of a good way to make things happen for you. To think that I was so stupid and blind that I used to swallow her shit-hook, line, and sinker, but not anymore. She will get everything that is due to her. You just have to wait. Of course, we'll see how I feel. Boy, you must be feeling really bad to be so uninterested in getting what you know is yours, kid. Well, Sherry, I just have a lot of problems right now. See you tonight. I'll be home by 6, honey. If you need me for anything, just call me. I'm in the office all day today. This is what I needed to hear. I called Dan, and he said he had everything ready. The 2 of us worked on the setup, got everything in place, and tested by 330. Dan installed the software on my home computer and created a secure folder to collect and store everything the cameras and microphones captured. We auditioned the living room, kitchen, guest bedroom, and of course the master bedroom, paying particular attention to this room. There were 4 cameras installed there that filmed almost everything that happened there, We also installed a camera and microphone in the master bath in case the couple decided to shower together. All cameras were automatically motion activated. I was ready. That night was the hardest of my life. I couldn't convince myself to play the sick routine again. So after dinner, when the kids were asleep, I obediently followed my wife into our room. It wasn't lovemaking, it was just sex. I almost completely lost my composure when, in the middle of the process, my wife said, "God, Jack, you make me feel so good. No one will ever be able to love me the way you do, baby. Just keep doing this to me forever." Without cuddling after sex, I turned on my side and pretended to fall asleep. Sherry seemed excited as we always hugged after making love. She pressed herself against my back, hugged me, and said, "Jack, I'm sorry if I didn't satisfy you." "No, Sherry," I told her. "You always satisfied me. I just sometimes wonder if I'm man enough for you." "Jack, why do you say that? You know that you have always been my man. My life will end if anything happens to you. As long as I have you, I won't need anyone else. You are my ideal lover. Always have been and always will be." "Yes, but I think sometimes it's just hard to believe." "Jack, what's wrong with you?" "Nothing, Sherry, I'm just tired." He closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Sometime later, I heard Sherry quietly crying. I didn't feel sorry for her, but I wondered if she was crying out of shame for what she had done, or because she felt that I had been rude to her. Once again, I got up before her and took the opportunity to install a voice recorder under the seat of her car. I also checked the video and audio from the installed equipment and made sure that everything we did at night was captured clearly, even in low-light conditions in our bedroom. When Sherry stood up, she was a little annoyed, telling me that I said something last night that hurt her feelings. Then she kissed me on the cheek and her mood changed to one of joy. I think it was because of her plans that day with her boss. I poured her a cup of coffee and told her I would be locked in my office all day. She told me she would spend the day showing a few houses and was pretty sure she would have a big sale, but would be able to pick up Shelby and Ryan after school. I kissed her on the cheek and headed for the garage door, but Sherry said, "Jack, you forgot to tell me that you love me, honey. You know how important it is for me to hear you tell me this every morning before we start our days." "Sorry, Sherry, I've already decided that you should know how I feel about you. I just have a lot on my mind. Okay, I forgive you this time, but a girl needs to hear her man tell her he loves her. Do not forget about it. I promise I won't," and I left. Yes, I will tell some girl how much I love her if and when I ever find another girl that I can trust enough to fall in love with. The information Sherry gave me about how busy she would be all day led me to believe that she would probably be spending some time with the true love of her life. I hope that was the case. I was tired of playing games. I wanted this whole disaster to end. I spent the morning actually doing some work in my office, but keeping an eye on the clock. Finally, at noon, I told my secretary that I would be gone for a few hours and put my plan into motion. I checked out the company van and parked across the street from my house where I waited to see what would happen. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I saw Sherry's car pull up to the house. She opened the garage door and parked in her usual spot. When she got out of the car and walked into the house without opening the garage door, I figured she was either going to drive away again or was waiting for someone. 10 minutes later, the same car. I had seen the day I found them to get there, pull it up into our driveway and pull it into the garage, taking my place just as he had taken my place in my wife's bed. I saw him get out of the car and the garage door closed. I had to give them credit for having the courage to meet so openly in my home, in my bed. It just proved to me that they both believed they would never get caught. Either that, or they both came to the conclusion that they didn't care whether they got caught or not. Well, they will soon realize how wrong they were on both counts. They got caught, and I'll make sure they both care very much. Soon, I'll have all the visual evidence I need of their dirty affair. For 13 years, I was convinced that my loving wife would never cheat on me, just as I would never cheat on her. And then the first doubts came. Is he really that much better as a lover? Why would she voluntarily risk destroying our marriage and his marriage, too, if she should have understood that I would definitely tell his wife what exactly the two of them were doing? I so desperately wanted to go into the house and meet them face to face. But why? What would it do? I would have caught them in the act, but hell, I already did it once without them knowing it. Would I feel better beating the crap out of her lover and going to jail for it? Honestly, None of them were worth it. My only concern was how this horror would affect my children and his children too, since I was ready to destroy him the same way he destroyed me. By 230 they must have finished because the garage door opened and her lover reversed his car and drove away. 15 minutes later, my wife did the same, closing the garage door behind her. I didn't want to waste time going through all the camera footage. I just wanted to make sure the evidence I needed was safely stored on my hard drive. After 10 minutes, I had seen enough. It wasn't a complete repeat of the last time they were together, but it was graphic as hell. They started on the kitchen table at the place where I ate. They laughed at how many times they had already done this, wondering if I would ever realize that I was eating in the same place where he had slept with her so many times. After that, they moved into our bedroom, but not before her asshole lover suggested doing it in my daughter's room just for a change of scenery. My wife had a fit about this when she said to him, "In no case, it's bad enough that I let you rub it in my husband's face. But the kids' rooms will always be out of reach." At least she seemed to have a few restrictions, just not for me. In the bedroom, they took off their clothes and spent the next 40 minutes. I noticed that neither of them ever said they loved each other. But my wife kept telling her boss that he was the best lover she had ever had. As a final act, they moved to the fireplace rug in the living room. While he got dressed and left, she took a quick shower before leaving herself. I thought it was strange that she didn't take the time to change the sheets, but figured she'd do it when she got the kids home at 3:30. This left her enough time to clean and air the room since I rarely returned home before 6. Knowing that the evidence I needed was safely hidden on my hard drive, I turned off the system and left the house, not even bothering to check the mess that was still present in my marriage bed. I had seen enough, and although my heart was hardened against my wife, I felt empty inside, pain, which soon gave way to burning anger and hatred. I think I actually smiled, knowing what the hell I was about to unleash on their lying heads. I went back to work and told Dan everything I had seen and heard. Like me, he couldn't understand how a supposedly loving wife like Sherry could do all this. Not only did she break our sacred vows to each other, but she went out of her way to heap as much humiliation on me as possible, all the while letting him know that he was a better lover, a bigger man, the only person who could complete her. Every time I mentioned it during our 13 years of marriage, she angrily told me it was too disgusting to even think about. All these thoughts plunged my soul into a deep abyss of pain and despair, from which I knew I had to climb out in order to complete my task of destroying them both. I needed to find a good divorce lawyer, and Dan suggested that I contact the law firm the company used to see if they could suggest anyone. I spoke with one of the corporate lawyers I knew at the firm, and he gave me 3 names of divorce attorneys who he knew had successfully defended a husband's rights. The first one I called was getting ready to retire and wasn't taking any new clients. But the second one said he would make time for me the next day at 3 p.m. After that, I decided to take care of canceling credit cards, changing beneficiaries, and moving money. When I got home that evening, Sherry was in the kitchen preparing dinner while the kids were doing homework in their rooms. She was wearing a yellow sundress, and she looked very beautiful, and for a minute I thought my heart would break again. She smiled and seemed so happy. I assumed it was her usual afternoon good mood. "Hey, baby, how's my man doing? I hope you had as good a day as I did." She told me this, causing my eyebrows to rise in surprise. My day was interesting, not really that good, but I did discover some interesting things I didn't know about. What was so good about you? I knew perfectly well why she was in such a good mood. I'm sure spending time with the world's greatest lover makes your day. "I made a sale," she said. "The first one this week, but I think there may be another one on Thursday when I show a few more houses. It must have been your lucky day," I told her without much enthusiasm. "Anything else special today? Meeting interesting or special people?" She looked at me strangely. "No, honey. Just a regular job to get through my day so I can go home and be with my family. You know where my heart is." While I was changing, I noticed that the sheets had been changed and the room had been aired. There was water on the shower floor, and I told her about it when I got back to the kitchen. "Did you take a shower this afternoon?" She literally jumped at my words and turned to me with a guilty expression on her face. "No, of course it's stupid. Why would I do this?" I don't know, but there is water on the shower floor, and it never stays there for more than a few hours. Oh, the drain is probably clogged again. Yeah, maybe, but I cleaned it out a couple of weeks ago. Maybe someone is sneaking into our house to meet their lover and they are taking a shower after sex, I said. This time she froze in place for a few seconds. She didn't turn to face me. She just continued to face the counter with her head down and then continued to part the lettuce leaves for the salad. My Jack, you definitely have a vivid imagination if you came up with something like that. Yes, is it so imagination or is it extrasensory perception? Sometimes I feel like I can read people's minds. Well, if you could read my mind, you would see how much I love you. And she tried to laugh, but it sounded forced. I'll be in my office. Let me know when dinner is ready. She turned slightly and looked at me. She looked worried. Dinner was quiet. There was little conversation. Sherry seemed surprised when I took her usual place at the table and made her sit in my place. Jack, you always eat at this place at the table. Why change now? Oh, it's just nice to have a change of scenery for a change. Sherry looked at me strangely, and when she sat down, she didn't eat much, just more or less rearranged the food on her plate. During dinner, the kids talked about their day, but Sherry and I mostly just listened, making appropriate comments from time to time. After we all gathered to help wash the dishes, I went back to my office to work on my project. I went through the footage and selected suitable frames that I could turn into photographs, downloaded them so I could make large prints on my Epson T3000. I then carefully chose the wording to accompany the photographs. All I had to do was meet with my lawyer to begin the divorce, get my finances in order, and wait for the next visit of my wife and her lover to my home. When I finally went to bed, Sherry was already asleep, or at least pretending to be. I was pretty sure that my actions that evening had given her something to think about, not that it mattered. There was nothing she could do or say that would make me change my mind about divorcing her cheating ass. And there was a small bonus in that. I think I made her at least a little nervous. Today was Tuesday, and she mentioned that she was going to make another sale on Thursday, so I took that as a signal that she and her lover would be getting together that day. I will destroy them that day. The next morning I was up early again, showered and left before Sherry woke up. I had a lot to do. My appointment with the lawyer was only scheduled for 3 hours, so I had plenty of time to take care of all the financial matters. My first stop was the HR department, where I changed the life insurance and 401k beneficiary from Sherry to Shelby and Ryan. I received a few strange looks from the woman who helped me, but I didn't feel like I owed her or anyone else an explanation for my actions. My next step was to cancel all of our joint credit cards and get a new one in my name only. Then it was time to go to the bank, where I transferred half the money from our joint checking and savings accounts to another bank in my name. I knew I had to do something about our house, but I was confident that the court would allow Sherry to stay there with the children, so I put off any action on that front until I had a chance to consult with my lawyer. At 3, I met with my lawyer and found him to be a fairly nice guy. He warned me that I could expect her to get custody of Shelby and Ryan, and I would give the house and half of everything else to my wife, even if I had proof of her infidelity. I told him I wanted him to write a request, and when he told me that I would never get away with taking almost everything from her, I told him not to worry. I was pretty sure I could convince her to agree to anything I wanted. He was not happy, but gave in to my demands, saying that everything would be ready for her to be served on Friday morning. I also asked him to prepare documents to file a lawsuit against her boss and the company he co-owned for deliberately destroying my marriage. These papers also had to be ready by Friday morning. I was ready. When I got home that evening, I was cold toward Sherry. Honestly, I had it all already, and I just wanted it to end so I could move on with my life. I knew there was still a lot of pain and sorrow ahead, but I knew there was no turning back, and either way I would finally share the pain and suffering with my wife and her lover. After a quiet dinner with some conversation, I retreated to my man cave, printed out the photos of the lovers I was going to use, and printed out the captions, doing everything without interruption. I also had time to write a letter to Greg Allen's wife, enclosing some prints of the large photographs I used on the posters, and pointing out that I had plenty of video to supply her in case she decided to divorce her husband. Shortly after 11, I went into our bedroom to make sure Sherry was asleep, then went to her car, took the recorder out from under the seat, rewound it, and listened to what was on it. I only heard one side of the conversations, and there seemed to be a few actual business calls, but there was one to Greg. "Hello, darling. Thank you again for this day. Me too. I always miss you after we were together. Yes. Oh God, would a whole week together be heaven? Yes, maybe we can soon. We can host a must-attend real estate convention. Laughter. Yeah, baby, we're meeting on Thursday afternoon. I can't wait either. Bye, baby." I was surprised to find that what she said didn't hurt as much as before. She didn't know how soon she would become his exclusive property forever, and of course the fact that in a day I would destroy their sweet life gave me warm feelings. Revenge was a powerful medicine. I replaced the tape with a new one and put the recorder back under the seat, where I hoped it would record evidence of her torment the next day when her world came crashing down. I barely slept that night, not because I was heartbroken. I went beyond that. No, I had trouble sleeping. I was anticipating everything that would happen the next day. The last time I woke up early, while Sherry continued to sleep. I stood and looked at the woman who was the love of my life, the mother of my children, the woman I expected to spend the rest of my life with. I felt tears welling up in my eyes as I realized I had slept with her for the last time. Never again will I make love to her. Never again will we hug or talk about our future. We had no future. And as I turned and walked away, I wondered if she knew the price she would have to pay for turning her back on me. She may not have known, but she would soon find out. I showered and left the house, had breakfast at the diner, and then stopped by work briefly to tell my secretary that I would be gone all day. I called Dan and told him what was about to happen. He wished me luck, told me to be careful, and let him know how it went. I quickly stopped by my attorney to make sure everything was ready for my wife and Greg Allen to be served the next day. After that, I called my wife to tell her that I would pick up the kids from school. My mom wanted to have them for the long weekend, so I'll stop by the house around 345 to pick up some clothes and take everything straight to Mom. My wife thought it was wonderful, and in her sexiest voice told me that on Saturday we would have time to spend the day in bed. Of course, I told her and hung up. I got to the point where I just couldn't listen to her bullshit. I was in no hurry to return home. By 12:30, I was parked around the corner waiting for the rally to begin. My car was mostly hidden from view, but I could see any car that pulled into my driveway. I didn't need to see the garage door go up and down. My wife and lover were predictable, to say the least, and I was aware of their routine. At 12:50 p.m., I saw Sherry's car pull into the driveway, followed 5 minutes later by Greg Allen's car. I should have felt pain knowing that my wife and her boss had sex in my marital bed while I sat around the corner waiting for them to finish, but it stopped hurting me. I couldn't believe how calm I was as I imagined all the things I knew they did together. It was almost like a memory of a cheap movie with little plot, but an amazing ending. At 10 minutes to 3, I saw as Hole Allen's car pull out of the driveway and drive away. 10 minutes later, Sherry followed him. As soon as they left, I drove into the garage and closed the door. I had work to do and not much time to finish it. I went to my office and checked the recording of the afternoon session. It was all there, but this time there was a difference. This time I didn't care. Once I was sure the footage was safely downloaded to my hard drive, I spent the next 2 minutes carrying all my pornographic photo signs I had made up the stairs, placing them by the front door where they would be handy. Then I packed a toothbrush and some clouts for Shelby and Ryan and put them in my car. My only regret was how much pain I was going to cause to the 2 children I loved more than anything in the world. I was consoled by the fact that I did not cause them the pain that they would soon feel when they realized that their mother and father were no longer together. No, all responsibility lay firmly on the head of their mother. It was she who decided to start a long affair and completely destroy her family. I drove to school at 315 and picked them up as the final bell rang. I told them they were going to spend the weekend with Grandma, and since she always spoiled them terribly, they were delighted. 45 minutes later, I dropped them off and returned home where I put my plan into action, and this brings us back to where we started. A bed, a table, and a rug on the lawn with all the signs. The neighbors are watching, and Sherry comes home horrified to learn the truth that I know everything. I didn't hear anything from Sherry that evening, although I thought I would. The police visited me an hour after Sherry left. They sympathized with me but said that I had to remove the signs and photographs, otherwise they would have to punish me for disturbing the peace and obscenity. I took them off. They did what I wanted them to do. My wife saw them, and from the look on her face, I realized that her life had begun to go to hell. I woke up Friday morning with a world-class hangover, but despite it, I felt strong. Yes, I was sad and lonely, but I knew that I had the strength to bury my anger and hatred long enough to take revenge on my unfaithful wife and her idiotic lover. Around noon, I pulled back the curtains on the window and saw that the carpet, kitchen table, and bed were gone. All that was left was the mattress and the sex-stained sheets. I'll drag them away or burn them later, I thought. The rest of the morning passed without incident, but by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all hell broke loose. I was confident that Greg Adams' wife had received the letter and photographs that morning, and my lawyer called me to let me know that both Sherry and Greg Adams and his associates had been served at work. He said he was there when they were served, and Sherry screamed and fell to the floor sobbing while Greg Adams completely ignored her as he stomped around the office calling me a bastard, threatening to kill me. However, his partners locked themselves behind closed doors for 15 minutes before returning to hand Sherry her final check and tell her that her services were no longer required. They also presented Greg with a check for his share of the partnership. When he told them he had no intention of selling to them, they quoted to him the section of their corporate charter dealing with morality and sexual fraternization with employees. The charter clearly gave them the mandate and right to sever all relations with him and his mistress. At the same time, the receptionist at the front desk told him that his wife was calling on the phone and demanding to speak with him. She received the letter and photographs and wanted to tell him not to worry about returning home and let him know that she would file for divorce the next day. I later learned from the husband of one of the women who worked at the agency that after he was escorted out of the building, everyone turned their backs on my soon-to-be ex-wife, and she lay on the floor for a good 30 minutes, sobbing and moaning. At one point, she apparently pulled herself together enough to leave the building, but no one was sure where she went. The next day, Sherry finally called me. Her voice sounded terrible. She wanted to know where the children were and did they know. I told her that they were safe with my mother, that they did not know and would not hear any dirty details from me. She thanked me for that and then asked if she could come in and pick up some of her things, and of course I told her she could. All she had to do was tell me when, and I would be gone for a few hours while she got what she needed. She wanted to know if I could stay and talk to her, and I told her that I really had nothing to say to her, which made her start crying again. You know, I'm very sorry. She said you need to know how sorry I am, Jack, and that I never meant to hurt you. I couldn't help it. I actually started laughing. How the hell could you tell me that you felt sorry for Sherry and you never meant to hurt me? What do you think I'll do when I find out? Congratulate you both. I didn't want you to find out. I love you, Jack. I've never loved anyone but you. I don't think you really believe this, Sherry. How can you? After you told your lover how much better he made you feel than I ever could. How he was the only man who could complete you. Jack, I never said such things. How could you think that I would ever say such things to him? Because I have tapes of you saying it all to him, Sherry. Every word, every shame you tried to put on my head in front of him. Every demeaning thing you could ever say about any man that you told your lover about me, your husband. I have nothing to say to you, Sherry, and there is nothing you can say to me that would make the slightest difference in how I feel about you. I love you, Jack. You have to believe that I have always loved you, only you. I don't know what made me say all this to Greg. You have to believe I didn't mean anything like that. I was just trying to boost his ego because he always told me how his wife always put him down. So let me clear things up. You constantly brought me down in front of him, belittling me and my pathetic attempts at love-making so you could stroke his ego and strengthen it because you felt sorry for him. Is this your story? You felt bad that his wife humiliated him. So you not only humiliated me, but you also had sex with him in every possible way for the last 6 months just to make him feel better. Yes, Jack, I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't mean anything like that. If you didn't mean anything like that, then why did you do it? I'm surprised it took me this long to see how pathetic you are, how ashamed I am for my blind stupidity. I don't love him, Jack. I love you. Please, Jack. If you can find it in your heart to give me a chance to make things right, I will give you all of me. You have to believe it. I made a mistake, but this cannot be the end of us. Let me show you. Please, Jack. Please don't leave me. Sorry, Sherry, I don't love you, and I didn't leave you. You left me. The things you did to him and the vile, demeaning things you said about me over and over again for over 6 months prove that you don't love me. You cannot love someone and wish them such pain, harm, and humiliation. I think you're disgusting, Sherry. Evil and disgusting, and I can't wait for you to get out of my life. The only reason I'll ever have anything to do with you is because of the kids. Remember them, Shelby and Ryan, the children we created when we were still a family? I want to spare them as much pain as possible, but I don't want to spare you any of it. What I really want is for you to feel all the pain you caused me. You and your lover Greg both deserve this, and I want you to feel it. Why did you tell his wife about this, Jack? It wasn't fair. It's not fair. Are you completely crazy, Sherry? What you did to me and our children is unfair. What the hell do you think I told her? Number 1, he destroyed my family by having sex with my wife over and over again. Number 2, he took over the only body on this earth that I thought was mine, and he made her tell him how wonderful he was and what a pathetic failure I was. And number 3, his wife needed to know what an absolute non-entity she was living with. What she does with this information depends only on her. They have children, Jack. Me too, Sherry, and I want to protect my 2 children. I feel sorry for his children too, but it is not because of me that they may face the possibility of a future without their father. It's his fault and yours too, Sherry. I refuse to take any blame. I don't want to divorce, Jack. I will fight for our marriage. There's nothing to fight for. Honestly, I would rather die than be chained to you for the rest of my life. I know you love me, Jack. You can't just turn it off because of one such incident. My God, you are delirious, completely out of your mind. Have you read the divorce petition that was filed with you? No, why on earth? If you just listen to Recent and let me make amends, there won't be any divorce. If you can't do it for me, at least do it for Shelby and Ryan. They need a mother and father, Jack. They will always have a mother and father. We just won't be married or live in the same house together. If you had bothered to read the petition, you would have seen that as long as you agreed to joint custody of our children, you can stay in the house and have half of all our worldly goods. What is not in the petition, but what I am telling you now, is that if you do not sign and agree to the more than favorable terms that I am offering, I will share videos of you 2 with every person you have ever known, including your parents, sister, and her children, and every other person I can think of. You won't do this, Jack. You can't hate me that much. Oh, that's where you're wrong, Sherry. I hate and nothing on earth will stop me. Fight me and I will ruin your life forever. And yes, Sherry, I can hate you that much. Please, Jack, don't do this. Sign the divorce paper, Sherry. Please, Jack, let me make it up to you. No, sign the paper, Sherry. Oh, God, please, sign the paper, Sherry. And I hung up. Sherry signed the papers, and the divorce was final in 6 months. She lives with Shelby and Ryan in the house we once shared, and I live in a condo a few blocks away. We are in the same school district, so there were few interruptions in the children's schedule, although the pain of the divorce was felt by both of them. Shelby told me that their mother admitted that she had made a big mistake, and our marriage could not survive, but we both assured the children that we would always be there for them. I have no idea what Sherry told her parents and sister about the breakup, but since they're talking to me, I don't think she told them it was my fault. As for my mother, it was just something that neither Sherry nor I could pass up. I had one last chance to pick up the recorder from Sherry's car, and the voice track was memorable. On the way home, she called Greg and thanked him again for the wonderful day, but said she thought I might be suspicious and suggested we put it off for a couple of weeks until she was sure the coast was clear. Then, arriving at the house, she was confused, wondering what all these people were doing, standing on the street and looking at our yard. Then, when she saw the signs and photographs and realized what I had done, her screams almost broke the recorder. When she left, she cried and said, "What did you do, Jack? What did you do?" And then, I think reality hit her like a bucket of ice water, and her story changed too. Oh, God, what did I do? No, God, please, what have I done? Please, God, make this all go away. She managed to call her lover, and when he answered, she screamed. He knows, Greg. Jack knows everything about us, and then I just cried for a very long time. It's been over a year since the fires of hell washed over us all, and I'm slowly starting to put the pieces back together. I'm not dating yet, and most likely won't be dating for a while. The thought of repeating what I just experienced makes me very wary of another serious relationship. Shelby told me that her mom went on a date once, but came home crying, and as far as she knew, never dated again. Sherry found a job as a secretary in a retirement village. I never found out if she's still in touch with Greg Allen, and I don't care. Greg Allen and his wife got divorced, and he couldn't find a job. You see, even though I didn't send videos of their fun to anyone Sherry knew, I wasn't that kind to Greg. It seems that many companies are terrified of hiring someone who has a reputation for seducing married women and ruining their marriages. Sure, I blurred Sherry's face in the video, but I left all the audio intact. I recently heard that Greg's ex-wife is dating a nice guy, a police officer, and it looks like it's getting serious. Good for her. Oh, by the way, about Greg's former company. To avoid bad publicity, they made a generous offer not to sue them. I agreed, and as far as I understand, all this is behind us. Now I am only interested in my children and their future. Maybe one day my future will become important to me, too. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.